What's up, everyone? We are live. We are back. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Nick Bennett. I am one of the hosts along with Andy. I'll let him introduce himself in a second. But we are the only show, and for everyone listen, please prove me if I'm wrong, but we're the only show to do this live where we break down a campaign in under 30 minutes. We did our first one last week. It was about 35 minutes. So today we're going to break it down in 30 minutes. The whole show theme, the purpose is to basically help marketers create an integrated revenue campaign live for the campaign that they submit on a shoestring budget. So again, using a people first kind of mindset. So Andy, I'll throw it over to you really quickly to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm President CEO of Dragon 360. I mean, Nick, yesterday was Halloween. I heard you had a sugar rush. So what all did you steal from the kids?
I got this entire basket of candy right here, so I am excited. I was like, I don't know when I'm going to eat lunch today, so
you did the dad tax. You took the dad tax.
100%. This
Yes.
is my lunch. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I think before we get into the campaign itself today, I think the other thing that would be important that we just bring up. So any questions, things like that come up during today's conversation, feel free to drop them in the chat. If we have time, if we're not going to hit up against that 30-minute mark too hard, we'll get to them if there's timing allows. But I think to kick things off, Nick, a great thing that I want to jump into here is the campaign itself, right? And I think, from your perspective, we have a great one lined up, right?
Yeah, we do. And this is a brand that everyone knows. So we're going to be talking about Demandbase today. And the whole kind of theme before Andy jumps into like what the actual campaign is and what Stephanie submitted was, how do you balance awareness and lead gen with Demandbase? So Andy, let's dive into the campaign and see what we're working with today.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is who doesn't know Demandbase, right? You're a marketer. I'm a marketer. A lot of the people listening in are going to be marketers. So everybody knows Demandbase in some capacity. And from their intent data to their predictive analytics to the ABM platform that it's built on top of, right? In my opinion, they're one of the big three. You have Terminus, you have 6 Sense, and you have Demandbase. Now, the interesting part of this campaign is just that. Most marketers know Demandbase as an ABM tool. But did you know that same account and intent data and all those predictive analytics that we use as marketers can be leveraged for sales? I think that's the true line here that we need to get through, because the campaign that Stephanie reached out to us about was around their sales intelligence products and offerings. And straight from Stephanie, the ask, right, the campaign itself is she wants every B2B seller to think of Demandbase as their go-to partner, helping to simplify the selling process and inform them of key data points like that accurate campaign and company data I just mentioned, the contact, the technographics, all that stuff, right? And it's about simplification, simplifying sales with smarter sales intelligence. But I kind of led it off though with the challenge. And I think, go ahead first. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, as someone that has been an ABM marketer and field marketer for a while, I have used these tools for, probably about like 7 or 8 years now. So I'm a huge believer of them. I think there is a lot of power behind it. And I think there's a lot of like, kind of like Stephanie mentioned, like, how do you generate awareness that makes B2B sellers think of Demandbase as their go-to partner? So I think it's going to be an interesting concept here that I'm excited to dive into.
Yeah. And that awareness that we have as marketers, both on the agency and the in-house side, like with all of your experience, right? And now on the consulting side, therein lies the challenge that Stephanie's running up against, is how do we generate that awareness so that every B2B seller does think of Demandbase as their go-to partner? And something that was really interesting, ironic, coincidental, whatever you want to call it, is as we were prepping for today's show, I actually started to see a couple of posts pop up in my LinkedIn feed asking very similar questions that we're faced with today. Somebody was throwing out there, I'm looking at 6 Sense and Demandbase, which one do I choose? And they were in a CRO capacity, I think. And then another one kind of just promptly asked to the fact of, hey, most marketers know about Demandbase and 6 Sense, again, those two tools that they called out, but my sales team has no idea. So as I was kind of looking through those, I found some interesting quotes that I just want to mention as comments here quick. So one of those that popped out was, I think a big part of the reason you don't hear sellers talking about them much is that marketers are the buyers. And the vast majority of companies, if marketing buys a tool, there's little chance that the sales org is going to be trained and coached how to get value of it. That's challenge number one that rolls back to that awareness piece. Another quote, excuse me, super interested in the sales and marketing POVs here as a marketing team in consideration process between these tools right now. Last one I just want to mention. Our marketing team, our marketing team bought 6 cents, sorry, for us, and no one on the sales team is using it. I think it's a really cool tool that could be used by the sales team, but the sales team is not brought in during the sales process and goes flat with the sales team. So, Nick, I don't know if you saw those posts or if you saw anything else, but those definitely caught my attention.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, honestly, the big thing, and trust me, I've bought these platforms for about 5 times now. And I mean, I guess I'm guilty of this too, because sales has not been brought into the sales process. Although I take that back. The like a VP of sales or a CRO has been brought into the sales process, but the actual sales reps or sales directors or SDRs, BDRs, whatever, they have not. But I think if you can at least bring in like that CRO, it was a huge piece to get buy-in. The issue is you have to then basically have them push it down, which I mean, that's sometimes a challenge in its own.
Yeah. So the ask of Stephanie here on behalf of this campaign is, this campaign has been running for a while. And based on the insights she shared with us, it's doing really well. It's driving awareness, it's generating opportunities. So why did she even reach out to us, right? Why is she asking, hey, let's talk about this campaign on the show? Well, because she and Demandbase are organizations and people that are focused on constant learning and testing. And I think that's the purpose of today's show more than anything else. It's not like last week's where, with Testimonial Hero, we were kind of going to market with a product that was out there already, but it was still kind of in its infancy to an extent. This is a little bit different. And as we kind of get into those ideas for campaign growth, you're going to see a stark difference between more deliberate campaign ideas versus, how do we scale the growth of an existing campaign, which is what today's episode, I think, is going to be largely focused on. But Nick, as we always go about this show, and as we'll continue to go about it, right? People first means we start with people. So let's talk about the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the function. So obviously the function here is sales. We're going to be focusing on, from a level perspective, manager plus. So when I think of manager plus, titles like CRO, CSO, sales development, sales enablement, sales ops, sales leadership. We're going to be focusing on a specific geo. So North America plus EMEA in the enterprise and mid-market across all industries. So I think we'll be focusing on those specific things there. Now, the other piece is, what problem or challenge are we looking to solve for this audience? Because ultimately, you're solving for the people. You're not solving for the company. It's people are the ones that buy these products. So it's, ultimately easier sales that are going to lead to stronger results, quality wins, most likely career growth and commissions. I mean, as a marketer, I always wondered like, hey, I'm helping sales close deals. Why am I not getting paid these big like commission checks and kickers and accelerators and all of these things? That's surface level though. So let's think about it a little bit more deeply. So if it's easier on sales, means you're selling with precision. So you have higher efficiency, greater scale, whether that's volume or monetarily. In turn, this kind of makes you be able to be more effective use of your time. I think there's some people out there, and I have this later in my piece here, but shout out to Vin, who works for Demandbase, who I see his content all over the place that talks about, life in sales as a tech basically seller, and talks about like how he prospects, talks about more time doing things that he loves, less time digging around mounds of data, multiple sources, less time arguing with marketing, because let's be honest, sales and marketing alignment, everyone preaches that they have it, but like that's BS. Most people don't have it, or there's silos still within the organization. More time with your family or doing things that you love. No one wants to chase prospects. No one wants to sit in meetings that go nowhere, because trust me, I sit in enough meetings as is. No one wants to hammer the phones, the inbox with no responses coming. So yeah, professional problems are evident. So but so is the personal pain that comes with not having the right data, the right alignment, or insights to be successful in your profession. So when I think about all that, there's triggering events that kind of cause this whole thing. And Andy, kind of from your experience and just kind of going through this, like, what do you see as like trigger events for Demandbase?
Yeah, I mean, whenever we're talking about integrated revenue campaign and all that, right? We have to think about, well, what's going to prompt somebody to actually look for a solution or take action? Or what's the thing that is just in their mind or being handed to them that's that trigger? And I think with this product and offering, there's a lot. There's just a multitude of various things, from personal pains and challenges all the way up to the professional and the corporate side of things. And I think a couple of those roll up to, an existing tech stack, whether it's, the Zoom infos, the Apollos, the BDR related tools, or just simply put, like, accuracy of information and the data that's available to make your life easier and simplify those sales. There's the expenses side of things, right? We're coming up on 2024, annual audits of expenses, or just an ongoing kind of review of where am I wasting my money from a tech stack perspective or a data set that's just not producing the results that I need. There's also, and this is what I typically see more than anything else, is directional shifts, uh, leadership changes, changes to the business, a new product coming into the mix, or a new CMO or strategy leader coming in saying, you know what, this is how you guys have done it up to this point. I think it's time to change this up and let's pursue this avenue instead. And that just triggers so many different processes changes, some strategic changes that dovetail between sales and marketing, things like that. And then I think the last one from the professional side of things is something that we all face as marketers and sales faces as well, is targets. Being handed targets that might be lofty, but you're expected to hit. So how the hell are you going to do that? And that's a triggering event to figure out what exists out there to help me get that job done. And then the last thing I'm just going to mention here is, as we move out of that professional trigger event, the personal frustration that lies within everybody in multiple facets. Again, to your point, Nick, having to chase deals that are just sitting there, or prospects that don't respond to you, or dealing with just crappy data, right? Or, the proverbial finger pointing between marketing and sales. Yeah, marketing is not delivering me leads, so I'm going to take it on my own to get the job done here. There's just so many facets that roll into this particular offering and the triggering events that are going to lead to it. So I think when we think about what this campaign really needs to elevate itself on, right, it's taking those into account and thinking, how do we leverage the opportunities that exist with those triggering events by layering in those people first mentalities on top of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I was going to say as well, the core to People First, at least from what Mark and I talk about a lot. And if you follow myself or Mark on LinkedIn, like, we talk about the kind of overarching theme. We have this image of like people first, kind of like how we view people first go to market. And the overarching theme across everything is a people's partnership centric model. Like, you can't go to market anymore by yourself. I think it has to change. It has to shift. And when we're trying to sell to a salesperson, we need to get creative. Like, I was actually a salesperson before I was a marketer. And now that I'm, working for myself, I'm kind of a salesperson again. It's kind of thrilling because I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like, that's, I'm out here, I'm doing my thing, I'm getting ghosted. I feel like a real salesperson. And we need to be creative. We need to engage them on multiple levels. How do you get multi-threaded through the account, especially at the enterprise level? And we need to keep in mind that they can sniff out a sell from a mile away, just like marketers can tell when you're slapping them by pitches in LinkedIn DMs. Like, we can tell when you're copy and pasting just in a sequence or whatever it is, cadence into it. Like, we're not dumb, because that's what they do every single day. So
Hang on. When you were in sales, did you pitch slap? When you were in sales, did you pitch slap?
No way. I think it's, honestly, I removed I was removing a lot of those people from LinkedIn. Now I just pitch them back and then they don't reply to me. Then I remove them.
It's a great tactic. I've tried it too. Somebody reached out to me like, you know what? I would love to have a demo in appreciation of my time. Can we also talk about your marketing? And it's like ghost town.
Love that. So, all right. Before we get into ideas, we broke down 3 different ideas. But again, the whole idea here is, how do you balance awareness plus lead gen by selling to sales? How do you build it on an existing campaign? Now, there's content, there's loads of it. You have the main content hub, partnerships, shout out to Sell Better, 30 Minutes to President's Club. Huge fan of Nick. He's a friend of mine. He's awesome. Women in Sales, again, amazing outreach, some events. There's some paid media, direct mail. I come from a direct mail background, so whenever people talk about direct mail, I get a little bit excited. And other things. So Andy, let's talk about your ideas for growth. The first one.
Yeah. And I think it's tying it back to those quotes that I found on LinkedIn, right? And figuring out a way to near bound through marketing, right? Everybody, near bound is the new term to go along with every other buzz out there, right? How do you take the surrounding connections of your ideal market and tap into them? And I think marketing is the gateway here, not a gateway drug, but a gateway to sales, right? We think about our go-to-market strategies, including the buying committee, right? Champions, influencers, decision makers, and gatekeepers. And it's playing along that same philosophy here. So rather than going to market, how do we live in the market? And I think that's how we need to play off of marketing's existing awareness to help them lead us into the sales organization of their businesses. Now, this is just like on the fly thoughts that come into mind with, this kind of idea, right? How do we create a series that can hopefully show, what are the benefits of marketing and sales alignment? Everybody preaches it, right? Oh, we need to be aligned with marketing and sales, right? That's how we get the best results. Well, great. Instead of talking the talk, how about we walk the walk and actually showcase and talk about those types of instances here? And especially from the fact of, when 6 Sense or Demandbase in this case are in an organization, right? It has layers that are going to help the entire brand, right? The entire business side. And when you can align them and actually get the most out of tool sets such as that and the data, right? Then you have true results. So creating an alignment series, I think, is important there. Another thing that I feel is important that we wrap into this, especially from that near-bound perspective, is everybody from marketing knows what Demandbase does, but sales doesn't necessarily. So how can we create a did you know content series that starts to talk about, hey, did you know, there's sales intelligence and account intelligence that can get pushed to Salesforce or Salesloft and all those BDR related tools that maybe the sales team isn't even aware of, and it's easy enough to tap into to create simplified sales. The last kind of piece here that I think is, and this is a little bit out there as far as creativity, so I didn't really think this through per se, but think about like a travel brochure, right? It's trying to convince you to take that journey, right? Here's all these awesome things that you can do. Here's all these awesome things that you get out of it. How can we create like a demand-based brochure that marketing can take and hand over to their sales counterparts? Like, hey, take this journey with me and let's get this sucker done to drive the business forward. So that instead of finger pointing, we're doing fist bumps, right? And creating that alignment across the entire org.
Ooh, I love that. Those are fantastic. I mean, like that marketing and sales alignment series alone, like I think everyone could benefit from that personally, because I mean, again, being both on like the sales side and the marketing side, like, and just working with a lot of companies, knowing a lot of people, like, it's just so funny how everyone like preaches marketing and sales alignment, but like, do you really? Because like everyone could talk a big game, but like, how do you actually implement a
Right.
marketing and sales alignment? Because if you, I bet you if you survey 100 people, a good chunk would probably not give you anything tactical there. And I don't even know, I mean, there's probably some tactical stuff that exists already out there, but like, I think it's something that could dig even deeper. So I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big fan, obviously, of the whole, near bounding with marketing. I was actually shout out to Will Taylor from the Nearbound team. We were talking about nearbound marketing the other day, actually, and just how that's going to be the future on this whole thing too. So huge believer of it. I think those are fantastic ideas. I think for me, the key takeaway there is let's live in the market versus go to market. Like, again, that's such a people first mentality, and I absolutely love it. Like, you have to live in the market. you can't just say, oh, we're going to go to market. But it's like, that's a company first mindset. You're going to market, you're going to do something, you're pushing your opinion, your thoughts on like other people, that this is the only way to do it. But if you're in market, it actually brings the alignment a lot better, I think. So definitely love that. I'm going to jump into my, we actually had a question. Are we taking questions live? Do you want to take questions live?
Same for the end. Otherwise, we're pushing 40 minutes, man.
That's true. All right. I'm going to jump into idea number 2 for growth. So again, shout out to Vin. I'm going to send this to him after. He's awesome. He is in sales at Demandbase. And I think he would be a perfect internal role model for this, is a day in the life of a sales rep. So how do you profile different sales reps, and how can Demandbase help them to be more successful? So, get into specifics here: lead routing, account insights, intent data, all of these things. But that brings the people first mentality to it. And when you can use, and honestly, I would say you're using Vin as an example. And how do you showcase this, but then go out to scale this to all these other people? So again, you want to take this like within North America and EMEA. There's tons of people that can do what Vin is doing, I think. And I think there's ways to even arm your team internally to help empower a lot of these people externally to create these videos. And maybe it's something where it's like, hey, you'll do the editing if need be. I don't think, shout out to Vin. He puts a ton of effort and work into his editing. I don't think you need to get as edited as that. Keep it raw, authentic, whatever. But if you guys did want to take on that extra step, you could do a little bit of editing for these people, again, to show that like, hey, we want to make this successful. You have these champions, you have these influencers, you have these people that actually want to be advocates on Demandbase's behalf. I think that's definitely awesome. Now, the beauty here is, how can you then repurpose this content across all different types of assets and channels? And you think about it, like obviously LinkedIn is probably where the majority of salespeople are, but salespeople are also on X, they're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. Like they're maybe reading blog posts, they're maybe listening to events, maybe they're listening to this event. Hey, if you're a salesperson, drop in the chat that you are listening to this. But how can you repurpose? And I think the repurposing piece here is super interesting. And how can even Demandbase internally repurpose that to create this like compilation type thing that they could use in this campaign? So I think that would be a fantastic way to go about doing it for growth number 2. And Andy, I'm going to throw it to you for idea number 3.
Yeah, I mean, before I get into that though, just to touch on kind of that day in the life of a sales rep idea, right? I think there's a lot of power and proof points related to that, especially when you start to get into that interview series type of mindset, right? We have all the proof points out there of kind of an ABM podcast model where you soft sell and showcase your expertise by having a guest that's in your market on your podcast, right? I think the same thing can be said here, but more importantly, I think you brought up a great point, is how do you diversify the sales reps that you're interviewing and bringing on the show? Because there is no sales team or sales organization or sales rep that's the same. You're going to have different philosophies, different approaches. You're going to have introverts and extroverts. You're going to be selling everything from SaaS through to, I don't know, some machine that nobody ever heard of and nobody ever will. But I think that's the most important thing here is how do you create that through line and narrative across all of sales, and the power that Demandbase or account intelligence or sales intelligence plays into their success by elevating those people and being in the market with them rather than speaking at them through the market. So that's a great idea, Nick. And playing off of that, as well as the one that I mentioned before with Nearbound, idea number 3 here is, how do we change the perception of the money terms that Demandbase has grown the business off of and has proliferated across all of the tech stack tools that exist out there, right? ABM, intent data, go to market, account intelligence. All of those have a marketing first context and thought process behind them. And perceptionally, right, we as marketers, we get it, we know it. But you ask a salesperson, well, what are they going to say? How are they going to define those terms? Are they going to define them in the context of how they impact themselves and their businesses and their jobs? Or are they going to just say, oh yeah, that's marketing's job. They worry about ABM, or they do this, yeah, they pass us the intent data, rather than thinking about it in the sales first mindset of, yes, ABM, this is how I operate with ABM. This is how ABM and me and the organization operate together. And I think one of the great comments that I found in those same LinkedIn posts that I referenced before is this: you need to have a very clear plan for what ABM will and won't mean. Some ABM programs are sales centric, some are marketing centric, some are highly scaled and digital, and others are heavy on bespoke content activations. So there's no common definition here, right? But there is a common perception that does typically lie on the marketing side of things. And I think to grow that awareness with the sales team and change their mindset when Demandbase's positioning and messaging is so focused on those money terms, that comes back to, how do we shift that thought process? And some on the fly thoughts there come back to, again, content series. How do we create a more than marketing content series? How do we wrap in the context of, yeah, go to market isn't just marketing, or ABM isn't just account based marketing. Same thing in playing off of kind of your idea, Nick, is, interviewing sales members and sales teams on how they would define those terms. Kind of in that street style video, you're walking down, or even in a conference, right? You're walking across a trade show and you're just interviewing the reps on the fly. Like, hey, tell me what ABM means to you, or hey, what does high intent mean to you, or anything like that. And using that conversation, not just for the creation of content, but to change the narrative, to change the perception, and using it as a soft sell opportunity, either live on camera or off camera, as, hey, I know you talked about ABM in this mindset and mentality, but have you thought about it in this way? And using that as a jumping off point, similar to what you would do on a podcast, to soft sell Demandbase and the other kind of underlying features that come with that. So I think broad strokes here, right? Don't change your messaging and don't change your positioning if you're Demandbase, but play into it and leverage the power of it in changing the perception, because you're going to get the quick wins up front, but you're also going to take control of that category in the long term by changing the narrative.
Love that. That's really good. I mean, honestly, I was just thinking, I was like, there's lots of companies, outside of Demandbase that could even benefit from that for sure too. So let's talk about like distribution. Keep doing what you're doing and more. So, obviously you're doing a fantastic job, but how do you do more? So I think it's engaging in marketing and sales communities, especially as you build out more partnerships that allow you to tap into their followings plus communities. I talk a lot about like influencers and creators. You're borrowing reach, trust, and authority from them. And I think that's something that you could do, especially with like the brand perception that you have, that a lot of people would be bought into. And again, shout out to Justin, who runs the influencer marketing program at Demandbase. He could do some really cool stuff that could probably support you for sure. You've got social, organic, and paid. I think doubling down more on that piece of it there. And I think, again, it's just hitting a few additional levers that you're already more than you're already doing. So, Andy, as we got a couple minutes left, I think you have some other considerations for them to think about.
Yeah, playing off of that differentiation in the market, I think jumps into some of the things that I spotted as we were putting this episode together. And one of those is kind of comparisons. There's so many data providers out there, from Apollo to Zoom Info, right? A to Z and everything in between. And I think that's where we need to think about, as Demandbase, how do we create that narrative and show those comparisons and help sales look beyond just, Zoom Info is going to help me get the data and the lists and create those prospect lists that I'm going to go after or send over to marketing as my tier 1, tier 2 accounts. But rather, how do we change that perception and play into that modernizing definitions kind of idea that I just talked about, and circle back to showing, what are the clear differentiators between Demandbase and those other data provider heavy tools that exist out there. I know there's a couple of comparisons that I came across, but I think we can lean into that even a little bit more, especially when we talk about it from the sales persona and the perspective that they have and the mindset they have when they're looking for tools such as the offerings and products that Demandbase is throwing out there. The last one from a consideration perspective that I want to throw into the mix here is across LinkedIn posts and just from my own struggles that I've seen with clients that use 6 Sense or Terminus or Demandbase, there is a lack of ownership typically when it comes to these tools. Yes, there are marketing people in there creating campaigns. There are salespeople in there looking at intent signals, but the lack of ownership and the lack of internal processes and communications is why most of these tools churn eventually within an organization. It's because not because of the tool itself, but the people that are actually being held accountable or not for putting them into motion and communicating across teams. So I think, one of those ideas that we talked about was near bounding with marketing, creating that alignment, using those kind of communications and talking points and content to address that ownership piece of things of why somebody's going to churn eventually head on is a great way to reduce that churn, but also grow net new customers.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, we're up on time. I want to go over our three key takeaways and then we're just going to wrap things up. So stay with me for another minute or two. We did very well today. So the three key takeaways that I kind of took from this was, again, live in the market. You need to be part of something rather than just focusing on marketing to people. Market with them, especially when it comes to salespeople, creates that alignment. Sales in the streets videos work really well, whether you're in the street, whether you're on the trade show floor. I think that's something that you have to lean into for sure. Those day in the life videos, people eat those things up. Third thing is sometimes you have to play into your messaging and positioning. Sometimes you have to change the narrative. It's okay. Doesn't mean you need to change everything. You just have to lean into stuff a little bit more. And it's okay to do that, especially when you're an established brand like Demandbase. So Andy, take us home, wrap us up. I need to eat more candy. So let's go.
You don't want to hit that cliff though. Like you don't want to hit too early. You gotta get through more of the day, man. Yeah. So bring it on home. Next episode of People-First Playbook is slated for next Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern. Remember, I think daylight savings is coming up this weekend, so don't forget your clocks. Otherwise, you're going to be late to the party, or you're going to be early to the party, I guess, on this one. In the meantime, if you have any campaigns or initiatives that you would love to have featured on the show, reach out to us. Check out People-First Playbook on Dragon 360. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or any feedback on the show, reach out to Nick and I. And until next time, we'll catch you later.